Yo, it's Guido coming at you with a tank review of the brand new BZ-166, the Tier 8 Chinese heavy tank from the new line. Following the BZ-176, which is the premium that has the great big giant derp gun, and rockets. Well, this one has rockets, but they stripped the gun slash giant shell, or I suppose it's a kind of heat shell, off of this line before they released it to the tech tree. That being said, I actually quite like this tank. It is a pretty standard, heavy, fairly hard-hitting at 420 alpha heavy tank on the tech tree. Pretty good cyclical gun, so none of the auto loader, reloader stuff, but it does have rockets. Rockets red glare, and I think that is what I initially thought would be a fairly inconsequential little game mechanic is actually pretty interesting, and I will have had some videos out in the recent past. You can go check those out, talking about rocket tactics and some of the things you can do. I'll show you a little bit about that in the gameplay, but this thing brings a couple other things to the game. Some pretty darn good armor overall, especially on its turret. Okay maneuverability with the rockets, but otherwise kind of slow. So this is a whole line of Chinese tanks where they were looking at trying to get more maneuverability on their frontier, and they were testing, or at least thinking about rockets. The rockets are actually back here, and there's a little pack of them. You can see they will burst out. This one happens to have 4 charges, and you're going to hit X to make those charges to work. So the Tier 7 has 3, the 8 has 4, the 9 has 5, and I believe the 10 has 6. So more to come on the 9 and 10 when I get to those reviews, but today we're going to talk BZ-166. All right, first thing we'll go through is some of the armor. Take a look at the basic shape. It is a mid-mounted turret, so it's not in the back. It's a little bit forward slung, so fairly standard. Very angled upper plate, decently angled lower plate, with the standard act of the lower plate being a weak spot. It does have a hatch which can be hit. That is a bit of a problem, and while it's not American giant size, it's not far off. It's certainly not the flat little Soviet Russian kind of version right there, so that is definitely a weak spot. Let's go over to tanks.gg. Take a look at the armor right here. All right, so this is against its own shell, and the standard shell is sitting at 221 pin, which is actually fairly decent for a standard shell. If we go to the heat pen of 270, that's 270 on the heat pen, it's still kind of the same. So there's the weak spots I was talking about as far as the hatch goes. The other one actually is a weak spot too, but it's flatter, lower plate kind of stuff. We get a little lower look, and we've got some very low chances of pin, very strong. If we're getting a little high, we're having some pretty easy pins. Let's go back to the AP shell for just a second, and you'll see that we get some auto ricochet stuff going on here, but again, the hatch is a weak spot in the lower plate as well. However, howsoever, there is one little thing, and there are a number of tanks who have this kind of shoulder weakness of various kinds. They get in this kind of weird angle. If we go ahead and start side scraping, watch the green show up. That is no bueno. I got hit a couple times trying to side scrape out. I couldn't really figure out what was going on because it looked like it was up near the upper hole. Well, it was, but it was on this shoulder. See this angle that's going on right here? So it doesn't take a whole lot of side scraping before that thing is a weakness. Now, obviously, if you side scraped out, the turret would probably be pointing, something like that. So you're going to have that good armor on the turret, but pretty quickly, and people are figuring it out, they can shoot right through that. So watch out for that. A little bit of an indifferent side scraper. Otherwise, it's kind of built pretty decently for side scraping. It's just, unfortunately, a big weak spot on the shoulder right there. We'll do a comparison amongst some of its peers, and I have selected the 166. Now, first of all, these are all tech tree tanks, so we're not going to bother with putting them up against the premiums, because the fact is this thing is well down the list on Tier 8 tanks overall, and everything above it is premiums. Spoiler alert, we'll get to that in just a minute. So we're going against the venerable IS-3, which is kind of a similar idea, hard-hitting, decent armor. Then we've got the super armored 100-01, just to kind of see how its armor holds up against a super heavy kind of idea. And then I thought this was an interesting comparison, the 53 TP, which is really a pretty good Tier 8 and has a hard-hitting gun and is similar in terms of gun handling and things like that to the BZ-166. Although, again, spoiler alert, the BZ is one of the worst gun handling out of all of us. In fact, I think it is pretty much the worst. Yes, it looks like it is. That being said, we've got a 420 alpha out of the BZ, 30 less than the IS-3, which used to be the king of alpha at tier 8, but those days are long gone. We have a 440 on the 100 and another 420 on the 53 TP. Pen is okay, like I said, standard at 221, so it's right in there with the rest of these guys, with a 270 heat shell, which is nice because you got a little bit more oomph in the pen department, but it's a heat shell with all of the appropriate or connected issues that heat shells have, being eaten by spaced armor and stuff like that. Rate of fire is pretty low. This thing does get hurt in the DPM and rate of fire category, even though it carries a 420 alpha like the 53 TP. It's a full 2 seconds, almost 3 seconds less or slower in a reload, and that's a big bummer actually. Because if we slide down here and look at the DPM, you got to ask yourself, what on earth? We got 2,000 on the 53 TP and only 1696 on the BZ, 18 on the IS-3, and 18 on the 100-01. So what other advantages is it bringing to the table in terms of balance if it's going to have such a crummy DPM? And again, DPM is not everything in this game, but it's a lot of things. And all else being equal, you would like to have DPM. But really, at the end of the day, it's DPM that you can use, all right? So it's usable DPM. That's the big thing. Dispersion. 0.42 is not good. I found that I needed an IA. I needed things like vents. I needed food. I really wanted to tame the dispersion because 0.42, frankly, fellas and ladies, is extremely painful in this game. And I'll show you what I did with my equipment and how I got that to at least something that is manageable. Aim time is also long. Not quite as bad as the IS-3, but it kind of feels IS-3-ish for sure. Here's a nice thing on this tank, -10. So now we've just found something that's actually good, right? We got a nice, comfortable -10 gun depression. We have a good alpha at 420. Not so good in terms of gun handling kind of idea, and on the low end of DPM. But here's the other balancing consideration, and this is what surprised me a little bit because I didn't realize this thing has a lot of turret armor at 300. I already showed you the model. So you're talking about, with a thickness of 300 off the bat and a lot of angles there, you're talking about people having to press 2 even at tier 9 and 10 quite a bit. Even at tier 9 and 10, pressing 2. And for a lot of the tier 8s, 2 ain't going to cut it. Now there was a sort of weak spot on the, if you notice the top of the turret right there was not as strong. So depending on your angle, you could get through the top part of the turret. And remember, lower plate and the hatch are also things. If I was playing turret games in this tank, when I'm playing, the places they're getting me are in that hatch. They're really going for that hatch. But I got a lot of bounces, a really nice turret. And then we're at 140 on the whole armor on the upper piece. Holy cow. The 100's at 200, but a much worse angle. This thing's upper hull is pretty amazing. Minus the shoulders. If you have any angle or you're trying to side scrape right there, it's not good. Mobility isn't fantastic. We are slow at 30. We can hit the rocket boosters and get to 45. You can put a turbo on it to help out with that. I am not using the turbo because I really felt like this tank needed a lot of gun handling help, which is where I went. There's your jet boosters. Stat 4 for 10 seconds each. We'll talk about that in the replay there. And that gives it some pretty decent specific power. It actually has a lot of power with the boosters, obviously, and then 770 here with the regular engine. Coming down here, yeah, whatever. Probably, and can you see it? No, it's kind of behind my little icon there, but the view range is horrible at 350. That is IS-3 levels of bad. And somehow the 100P has 400. I think it's a height thing in terms of these. 370 on the 53 TP. So what do we have here? We have an interesting tank that has some kind of derpy gun handling, to some extent a bit inexplicable. However, it's doing pretty good, and we'll get to the stats in just a second. Good gun depression, good turret, nice hole, weak spot with a hatch that's big but not gigantic. Still, it is definitely hittable. Weak lower plate like most of them, but rather large, which is a bit of a problem. Unlike the IS-3 that kind of has that little triangle, this thing is a great big wide low spot right there. And very bad maneuverability, minus 4 times in the game you can press X and go quite fast indeed. And there are some benefits to that. I do have a video coming out, or probably has already been out, talking about rocket tactics, so check that one out along the way, and we'll talk about it a little bit when we get into the gameplay with this tank. So how have I done? I have 20 battles in this thing, and because of all the various bonuses these days, holy cow, 97,000 experience in 21 battles. It's crazy how fast you can actually grind. I did unlock all of the modules. I didn't talk about it, but the crew positions are the same from the tier 7 up to the 10, which is nice on there. I don't remember where the commander is. We'll look at that in just a second, but I played 21 battles with a 67% win rate, 891 average XP, and 1,410 damage caused. Now that is not a sustained 67% after 100 battles or so. That is a medium, for me low, for most people probably a medium kind of average damage at tier 8. So I'm going to have to bring that up if I want to stay anywhere near 60%. I do have multiple games with this tank where I just got lucky. I got killed early, messing around with the rockets, doing things like that, seeing what would work, what would not work. And the teams just won without me doing a daggum thing. In fact, I have a couple 0 damage games where we won. So you get that kind of statistical anomaly stuff when you're talking a sample size that low at 21. Just kind of the name of the game. When I did the video on the BZ-166, I was at 30-something% for the opposite reason. There were games where I did really well, and we just lost. We just didn't have enough help, or I didn't do well enough. Let's just put it that way. But in any event, I think this is probably a 55 to 60% tank. I'm going to back that up a little bit with stats from everybody in just a second. The victories, as noted, the hits are okay, even for as derpy of a gun as it's got. I'll show you what I did with my equipment and crew in just a minute. Damage ratio is okay, a little bit over 1-to-1, which that speaks to the only 1,410 average damage per game. Look at the armor use efficiency at 0.65. That means that you have a situational moving on towards strong armored tank. Anytime you're at about 0.5, you probably have a strong turret, and you're able to play turret games, but maybe there's some weaknesses, or the rest of the tank is weak. Read, say, like a T29. All right, so you get a lot of turret bounces, but the whole is pretty much butter. Anything about 0.5 is looking like that. But once it starts to rise up above 0.5, now the rest of the armor is really coming into the game. So 0.65 is pretty reasonable for what's not really billed as a super heavy tank. That's pretty decent armor, my friends. Damage received at 1229, and damage assist at 327. Destroyed is not so good, so I'm at 0.95. I'd like that to be above 1.0. So none of these stats really support me continuing at 67%. It's nice to be there right now. We'll see where we get at 100, but let's take a look at how everybody else is doing with this tank, because I think it paints an interesting picture. I would not have guessed this, my friends. These are the tier 8s. As noted earlier, I said the premiums are stacked up at the top. I mean, you got to go a long ways before you find a tech tree tank. But lo and behold, what tech tree tank do you find? The BZ-166, which is pretty dang amazing. We're going to get rid of the premiums here and go just regular. And you'll notice on win rate, it's #1 right now. DPG, #1. Frags, 2. Damage ratio, 1. Kill to death, 4. Survival, 4. Spots, this is pretty funny, 166. So the rockets are being used to get people up into the front. Very interesting story. Win 8's actually at the top. We will see what happens in the next 6 months to a year. It might slip a little bit. There is the standard thing of early adopters. People don't really know how to fight against it, all that kind of stuff. I would counter that by saying people don't really know how to fight with it very well either. And I honestly think that as people learn more and more about the rockets and what they can do for them during the game, this may actually stay up near the top. I believe it's a top 5 heavy tank right now. Now, I was so wrong on the BZ-158 because it's actually at the top as well at tier 7. So I'm going to say that, BZ-166 is going to stay in the top 5 with a little trepidation, to be quite honest. But I really do think that this is going to be up there. And when I say top 5, I mean tech trees. I'm not talking top 5, because it's certainly not going to pass up the Skirta, all right, or things like that. The 832, all that good stuff. All right, so let's take a look then at the way I've got mine set up. Go back into the garage here. What am I running? I am running standard for some clicking the wrong things. I am running standard equipment, so you could certainly help yourself out by going bond or bounty equipment, or experimental. We're going to leave that one right now. Vents, IA, to tame the dispersion a bit. A rammer directive because of that really long reload, and food. So I have not. I'm going to do this. I'm going to touch wood, and now I know that my next game I'm going to get lit on fire and burned to the ground. But so far in 21 games, no fires. The Chinese tanks, at least for me, don't tend to catch on fire, but I would understand completely if you were going to run a fire extinguisher. I just found that it's not bukti, what is this, extra rations? The poor communist crews, all they ever get is extra rations. What is it called? Improved. All right, so looks like steaks or something, though. It actually looks delicious. All right, so rations. We've got the vents. We've got brothers in arms. You can see that this is a decent crew. I put together a bunch of people who are sitting in my barracks, so these were all good crew members or bonus crew members, awesome epic guys who have some of the best voice lines in the game, by the way. 2 of the Christmas ladies and then an extra Chinese crewman I had sitting around. And we brought them up to 3 skills, and now they're at 78%. In fact, this was the crew I started in the BZ-58, and I'm moving this one up to the tier 10 as I go. So what does that give me over here? On the right side, we have, it doesn't obviously change average damage at 420, but the gun loading gets down to 11.87. All right, that's getting into reasonable heavy reload range. Jumps up my DPM to 2,123. Brings that dispersion all the way down from 0.42 to 0.37. Still not great, but usable in the close to medium range. So much better. And I could do a little bit more probably if I get the bounty or the improved stuff, the bounty or bond equipment on there. And none of this other stuff really changes too much. Gets my view range up to 405, which is not maxed, but it's better than the 350 it started at, my friends. Much better than the 350 it started at. All right, so there you go. We have the tier 8 Chinese Heavy. It's doing much better than I would have imagined. Very surprised, actually. Maybe it slips a little. I say it's going to stay in the top 5, having had a little bit more experience with the Chinese Heavies and how the rocket stuff works. I think there's more to come on figuring out what people can do with the rockets, because it is, quite frankly, much more than just hit X a couple times and get up to the brawl faster. Yeah, there is something to be said about getting first shots, and there are certain maps and modes and positions where getting there might give you a huge advantage in a tank like this. If you can get to places where mediums usually go, all that kind of standard stuff we talk about. I think there's a whole section of rocket use from the rest of the battle that people are going to learn about, and they may be even more useful in that area. So what I will say about them in general, if you've got a rocket tank, try to save half of your boosts for the rest of the game. So maybe in the case of this one, use 2 to get to the front. Again, it's map and mode dependent. Sometimes you really only need 1. Use as few as possible to get to the fight, and then hold on to them for repositioning, for moving, for making dashes across the open, for getting to the hit points later on, ramming, pushing guys off hills, stuff like that. All right, let's take a look at some gameplay. All righty, well, we had some technical difficulties. You wouldn't know that because this just followed what I was just talking about, which was actually about 2 days ago as I fought through the game stopping working, thinking it was my new old graphics card and yada yada. So I had to completely reload the game, which you would think I'd learn this because I've done this several times in the last 4 or 5 years, but all of the save files go away at that point because I'm smart, right? I put all my save files in the replay file. Maybe I should put them somewhere else. Maybe I should put the ones I'm going to create content somewhere else. I'm not going to learn. Nope, ain't happening. Here we are on Lakeville Dorf, Himmel's Lakeville Dorf, and unfortunately, the replays I had earlier were much better. I played the tank a little bit more, worked on the field mods and such, and well, this is what we got, fellas. You're going to see some decent games, but not absolutely amazing. So I have used 1 rocket power to get around. We're on Lakeville. I'm in a heavy. I am bottom tier, but only 2 tiers, so I'm only 1 tier down. And I will say that this tank is actually pretty darn good against higher tiers. With the 270 pen with the heat shell, that's actually doable. Now it is a heat shell, so you're going to be challenged a little bit. 221 on the regular shell with regular AP. So the heat will challenge you in the ways that heat challenges you, but when you need pen and you have a shot on them, it's going to do pretty well. You know, the meta is definitely developing. I can see it on Lakeville. There are now a lot of people that go Valley, and this is every game. I mean, it used to be in the past you would certainly get some people doing it, and sometimes more than you would like, but now, because of the way they've changed it, people start feeling like there's a few more places to go hold down and just sit there and plink away at each other, and it is an absolute festering sore at this point. But there you go. You deal with what you got. Everybody's piling into the valley. I will say what that does for you a little bit in a meta discussion is it kind of opens up the things you can do with town. Which means if you get a few helpers in here, you can clean up town pretty well, pretty quickly, and then you can make that decision. Do I need to go back? Can I continue to push? Or can I snipe? Are we going to get somebody up underneath them? All those kinds of good things. And that's sort of what's developing right here. I've maintained my 3 charges. I still have them. I'm thinking about this. I was going to say I'm discussing it, but I don't think I am. I'm playing with Zemke. That's right. I had forgotten. I'm platooned with Zemke, so we are discussing, do we push in? Do we think there's anybody up inside the north part of the city here, or have they run away? Based on the mediums we see moving away, the assumption here is, yeah, there's nobody in there. So Zemke's pushing down low. We got a scout. He mentions that BZ-166 should give us some lights. Now I'm trying to get into position. There's an argument there for me to use rockets to get up in here a little bit faster, but I was kind of saving them for later. Feeling like not much of a game at 474 damage at this point. But I just want to show you with the rockets some of the kind of ideas you can have when you have a weird game like this and you have a relatively slow tank, but it's Chinese and it's carrying rocketry with it. You're going to have options, my friends. All right, fantastic. I really didn't deserve that shot to hit, but it did, so good. And there's the little rockets right there. Okay, I was hanging back a bit. It's not a great sniper tank. We can tell that everybody's pushed back around the corner. We got the Char Footer and some other fellers. To be fair, our Valley fellers did not roll over and die, so that was very helpful. So I've hit 2 rocketry action-ons right now, and I'm heading up here. And I think I actually might use the next one just to get into position, or maybe I sit here for a moment. Yeah, I think I look for a shot here first. Minus 10 gun degrees, very comfortable. That's a nice thing. Not very usual for the Chinese and the Russian tanks to have that, so that's very nice. I'm going to cut a little bit over here to the left, and so there we go. We've used 3 rocket power activates to move across a significant amount of the map because the situation allowed me to do so. And now we're going to come in here. We've got a lot of fellers behind me. We've got them trapped in the valley here, and we've got them outnumbered. The Char kind of trades a bunch of damage. They don't know I'm here yet, which is nice because the 832 is sort of not paying attention, and I'm going to just come around here and zap him. For a nice 480, I mean, that's very nice, right? Talking about a tier 8 that dropped 480 on somebody. Ouch, that hurts. Nice high roll for sure. Alright, so we're going to sneak one shot down into the lower spot right there. And the Char goes running in. So we've gone from a 400 damage game, and with rocket power activate, got into the fray during the cleanup phase of a game, when otherwise a really slow tank might be showing up about right now. And I've grabbed up a bunch of damage. So I've grabbed 2,646, and I don't think I get another shot in here. They just melt too fast. I'm pretty sure the T-50 goes up the ramp, yeah. And by the time I try to get around, the VZ is gonzo. And just like that. Now this is a romple stomp. Really the big key here is just to show you that with the rockets, I could have used 2 to get into town, but I was paying attention to how much was invested in the valley. And I was thinking I really didn't need to rush into the city that fast. In fact, if Valley lost quickly, I might have needed to turn around and use the rockets to get back to Cap. So I used 1 to get in, kind of assessed what was going on, got into city, was a little bit reluctant to push in, but once it was proven that we were going to just completely clamshell these guys from both sides, 3 rockets across the north, and I'm in the fight. And I turned a 400 damage game into a 2,600 damage game. So one of the advantages of the rockets, if you can keep some of the activations around, and the heavy hitting gun at tier 8 relatively anyway. There's other tanks that have as much alpha or more, but pretty nice with that 420 alpha slapping people. All right, next example. Let's just talk a real quick couple of rocket tactic things before we get to the next full game. I'm here on mines. I've come up to the middle right here. I have used 1 of my rocket powers. I got a lot of fellers back behind here, and we took the hill, which is good. Now I can kind of come up here. There's only 1 arty, but keep that in mind because it's a 4207. So we're going to come up here, and what I'm thinking is I'm going to try to sneak that shot, and let's see, backing out for now, I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to zing by here with the rockets. If we can push these guys back, or maybe a bunch of them shoot and they're not paying attention. First, we're going to deal with the BZ right here. Okay, bounces. Oh, by the way, the turret's pretty good, fellas. Look at that. And boom, a bunch of them shot, right? A bunch of them fired. They all backed around the corner. I know the mill's there, but I just, boom, rocket. And because it's got so much power, it just absolutely zings up the hill. I mean, I'm doing 40 kilometers an hour up this bloody hill, right? Now, if I get tracked, that's a problem. Look at this dude, doesn't even realize what I'm doing. He's like, holy crap, what's he doing? All right, so I jam on the brakes, trying to get a shot on him, and unfortunately, I get into the track. Remember, when you jam the brakes on, you can't go backwards very fast. It's 1 kilometer an hour backwards. So I jammed it on a little bit overshot and decided to come back and try to get a shot. I am playing with fire there. That's a BZ-166. If he was reloaded and paying attention, I could have eaten 900 in the side. So something to think about. But in terms of getting up and over up onto the hill, they're great for those quick bursts across open space. All right, got one more for you on this battle. All right, a little while later on the same battle, you can see that we have neutralized the island, so they're not wrapping around us there. We've come around over on the east side, and all of our tanks are trying to do the old peeky pokey on the top, but unfortunately these 3 guys are lined up along the bottom edge, which is what you got to do to light people who are trying to spot, and then the sniperinos back there can kill them. So I've come in here and we've killed the 176, but I ate a big shot from him for 917. I bounced the Sioux. I've bounced to 1500. But there's an FV207 who you can see has hit me once already for 257, and I want to avoid getting hit by him again. And I know he's probably getting a bead on me, all right? So I'm going to turn, and I know I have 2 rocket activations, and I'm thinking right now I need to get my hull turned around, and then I'm going to use the rocket. And we're going to blast out of here. Boom. All right. Now, unfortunately, that's an artifact from the stupid replay right there. But that shot came in and landed right behind me. I did get stunned, but I didn't get hit. So use the rocket power to zing on out of where you think Artie is aiming in on you. So nice little rocket tactic. Keep that in your hip pocket. Second example, again, a tier down, only a 2-tier battle, so we got 9s to contend with. And we are here on actual Himmelsdorf. Himmelsdorf. All right, the OG map. We're gonna go up the hill, and I'm going to use a rocket. I think maybe, actually, I might use 2. Let's see. I don't remember, to be quite honest. Gonna come around here, and I think you still want to maintain rocket power on the shorter maps like this, but you might be able to get into a good position, and I did use 2. I'm trying to remember all these things as I go through them. So I had 2 options here: to follow the LHMTV and get up and over, which is not a bad option, or based on how good this turret is relatively and what I'm facing, I look at this, go, well, the Conqueror, that's kind of a problem, maybe the AMX, but we'll see if they show up. How about we go left, get ourselves positioned over here. We're going to be here early, much earlier than most people would expect, all right? They could look over and say, oh, there's a rocket tank, I might expect him there, but that's a little bit beyond the calculations of the average player. So we're just going to come up here, we're going to use this nice hold down spot, and we've got here much earlier than anybody else. LHMTV is kind of taking a peek. That's helpful. That lets me know that some fast tank on the other team isn't going to show up here and shoot me in the side. So I've watched that on the minimap. There's Mr. LHMTV, and I've got this position, and now I can see that my backup is showing back up. It's showing back. My backup is showing back. It's not showing back up. It's showing up. This guy, I don't know. Could just plain old be a bad player. That's a really bad line to take. I don't care whether you're slow or fast. Something could be where I was, but in any event, being able to get to that position was helpful, and I got that early damage right there. 430's trying to do his thing. He shoots and misses. I'm probably lucky because I was kind of exposing my lower plate. Here, this guy comes. All right, he's just bad. That's a terrible decision. That's heat, my friend. Shooting into tracks, you're going to get that. I really should be shooting AP right now until I find something that's extremely thick, but because I'm Guido, I just press 2 and off I go. Snapshot works. I'll take it. I'll take it. You can't expect that. It's a low roll at 385, but there you go. And the team is doing pretty well. Now, I've got 2 rocket actuations. I also noticed that the Conqueror is down low, and I think the M441, he might be up with me. Yeah, it looks like he's up with us, all right? So I don't want to get up there too quickly. Good news is Mr. Beefy has showed up. Gu Yang, the T95. Here comes the old artery stopper right here. This dude's going to come in, and he's going to cause issues if he's aggressive. He's going to get in there. He's going to scare them with the big gun. He's going to defend with the big armor. He's going to give us opportunities because he's keeping them busy. And it looks like maybe the 105 is... No, he loses his mind and does this. I kind of missed the shot, unfortunately. I had two options or two opportunities to take it. I don't know if that was Artie or him shooting right there. It looks like somebody took a poke at me. I'm watching this develop. I missed that shot. A little bit of an opportunity. Just as a side note, friends, there we go. Everyone's pushing up. I see Mr. Buffy is heading up in there, right? The beefy man is in there. I'm going to go around him, and I'm just going to... There we go. I jammed on the brakes. I really didn't want to just go flying around the corner and get shot by 3 people. All right, that's an interesting one, fellas. I had to be careful there. Why? Because I had a daggum heat shell loaded, and if I shoot it into that stupid statue, it probably doesn't go through it and hit him. See, notice how I had to look somewhere else? If I had a regular AP round, it could have shot right through it. Would have reduced its pen, but it wouldn't have eaten it immediately. Looking for the reload. One thing you're going to watch for on this tank, my friends, is it does have a relatively long reload, so be careful about that. Now I'm going to use the rockets for the next option here. Oh, I had to slow down. Didn't quite go as I wanted. I didn't get the shot going in, and I also didn't ram him for very much. That surprised me a little bit. I thought for sure I'd get a lot more damage out of this. My own Artie is splashing me. That's fantastic, Mundo. My turret can't keep up. I'm getting around by friends, but somehow I still get... I don't know why the 122 had to ram me. Did he really whiff it that hard, or was he trying to ram me? I'm not sure. Come around here. We're going to find this guy. All right, Mr. Vipera, here we go. And, oh, that's heat, fellas. I wish I would have pressed back to 1. That's probably 2, maybe 3 shots now. At least I worked around it on the other one and got the shot. But that's 2 shots for sure I probably would have got. We'll shoot him on the back deck. Track me. I'm going to back out. 2 shots I would have got if I would have not been shooting heat, I think, anyway. We'll shoot him if we can. Now watch this snap-a-lama ding-dang. I'm going to get hit with HE from the charioteer. Okay, there you go. He hits me. I know where he's over there. Snap!
Thanks for your cooperation.
That's ridiculous. That should have never happened. You miss every shot you don't take. I mean, that shot was so bad, it might as well have not been taken. And I didn't miss. I don't know how that works. Don't ask me. RNG. That's never going to hit. Just whatever, stupid Artie. We'll just shoot in his general direction. That's pretty much it, fellas. You got 2,344. I did not maintain enough rockets. The RAM was not as spicy as I would have liked it to be, unfortunately. So right at this part of the game, you'd really like to have a rocket actuation because you can get into and help with the cleanup. Notice I just can't get down there fast enough, and everyone's going to die before I can get there. I just wanted to leave that little thought with you at the end. Let's wrap it up. One more, rocket tactics. I wish I would have had this for my rocket tactics video yesterday, but it just basically happened a few games ago. I can see that this is pretty much a win in progress, whatever. And I see this juicy, relatively light Barask right here, and I'm going to try to use the rockets in a dive bomb. All right, let's see how that goes. Setting myself up. He's not moving. Rocket activate. Here we come, baby. And oof. And double ram. Yes.
Our track has been damaged. Track hit.
Double ram. Oh, look out, Mr. Renascernante. The Riscarante. He dies. I'm taking all kinds of hits. The TNZ did not like getting doved on and hits me for a bunch of damage. We'll come around here and we'll slap him for a little more. There we go, 377. And that is it. It's all over but the shouting. Attack from above. Remember, use them rockets when you attack from above, my friends. All right, now let's wrap this thing. Well, what is the final verdict with the BZ-166 Tier 8 Chinese Premium Tech Tree tank with rocket power activate? Still a top 3. I just looked at the stats since this is a couple days later since I did the first part of the video. It's holding strong as a top 3, basically. Easily top 5, but probably top 3 at the moment, Tech Tree heavy tank. So that's quite good for a tank that just showed up. The rockets give you a lot of interesting possibilities. If you check out my video from yesterday, you're going to see a bunch of rocket tactics and things I talk about. I added a couple more in here. some things to put in the back of your mind when you're using these tanks. In general, holding a few of the rocket actuations later in the game can be quite useful depending on the situation, as we talked about right there. So I quite like the tank currently. I've played a few more games in it. I'm still at 74% win rate, but I will tell you that that is still a lot of luck, because only 936 XP and only 1,390 on the DPG, which is pretty low. Although look at the armor use efficiency has gone up a bit as well. But when you're talking only 34 battles, a couple really good or really bad battles can hurt that quite a bit. And I do have a fairly significant amount of 0 damage battles on this tank. But with its armor and the rockets for positioning and its hard-hitting gun, I think that all adds up to being able to be a little bit more carry machine. And I won't say carry machine in terms of Super Unicum go carry every game. But for the average player, it's got enough things going on for it to kind of keep it in the fight. Try to avoid the rockets to the front and die YOLO trick. Okay, it's going to be tempting, so try to avoid that. But keeping some rocket stuff in reserve, being smart about using the turret, because it is quite strong. Getting to at least medium range to get shots. It's not a sniper. All those things added together is going to let you kind of stick around in a game a little bit longer. And while your DPG may not be huge, you'll be around. And that'll help your teams win a little bit more. There you go. That's all I've got for the BZ-1. What is this thing? 166. Let me know what you think down in the comments on there. What have you done with your rockets? Anything interesting? As a matter of fact, if you have done anything pretty cool with them, send that replay to me, because I'd love to see it. That is all I've got for today. Thanks for supporting the channel, my friends. We will see ya.